Well, Sean, I got to eat crow. How are you? But I got to eat crow.
I'm good, especially if you're going to eat crow. Here, let me pass you some hot sauce.
Derek Van Diest. Yeah, Derek Van Diest was on our podcast, this NHL at the Rink podcast, last week, and he said Oilers in 6. And I laughed. And I laughed again. And then when he left us and we were talking more, I said I disagreed with him when he was on with us, and then I disagreed with him when he was off. And he was right. He was 100% right. Lesson learned. Believe the guy who's covering the series, not the guy who's watching the series when he can on off nights while covering another series. Derek was right. The Oilers were better. They're in the Stanley Cup final. Dallas did look tired at the end of the series, I thought, and he said that. So I'm eating the crow, and I'm giving Derek all the credit. Oilers and Panthers coming up, Game 1 Saturday night.
Oh, see, I thought you were going to eat a different dish of crow.
Oh, no, I can't eat 2 on one episode.
Oh.
I'm full already.
Oh, okay.
All right, the other dish of crow is I said the Rangers would win, right?
Yeah, you did pretty good this round.
Yeah, so I was dead wrong. I got to tell you, I was pretty darn good through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. I think my record for the first 2 rounds of the playoffs in picking this was 10-2, I think it was. Well, I'm 10-4 now because I got it wrong, and I think you got it half. I'll do the glass half full, half right.
Yes, I was wrong on Edmonton too. I think a lot of people were wrong on Edmonton, and yeah, I do think that their path, Dallas's path, caught up to them. I mean, they had to beat the last 2 Stanley Cup champions, loaded with talent, and I'm not going to take anything away from Edmonton. They played the Los Angeles Kings, who, as far as playoff teams are pedestrian, and they played Vancouver without Demko and without Brock Besser in the game that decided the whole thing. So
right,
they had a far easier trip to the conference final, and then they cashed in on it. Like, you can talk about trips all you want and ease of trips and everything else, but in the end, you have to win. And they won, and they proved a lot of people wrong, and good for them, and it's going to be a great, great, great final.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think it's going to be a long series. I think you've got different teams here that are, when they're on their game, are really good at what they do. Like, that's what you have. They play a different way, but when they're playing well, they're really good at what they do. We're going to have Ryan Callahan, former NHL player, now doing some stuff with ESPN. Ryan's going to be joining us here shortly. We talked to him all about this series, and that's what we're talking about here. And, Sean, look, I mean, we can go over a number of different things here that are the top line storylines for this series. McDavid finally being in the final. The Panthers getting back their second year in a row, proving that they're the class of the East. The most experienced coach versus the least experienced coach. But the thing that like almost blows me away when we talk about this series is the one stat that the Edmonton Oilers have going for them right now: 28 consecutive penalty kills. For years, this year too, it's been all about their power play, and as well it should be. They scored in 4 of their last 5 opportunities in the Dallas series. But their penalty kill, Sean, has been lights out. It's been dynamite. And as big of a reason, if not a bigger reason, that they're winning games is this PK, not necessarily their power play. And we actually you asked a question to Ryan Callahan. You'll hear his answer about why the PK is outperforming a power play in the playoffs, why that happens. But that's the stat to me that just simply blows me away about the Edmonton Oilers right now, is 28 consecutive penalty kills. I did not at all, with the personnel that they have, did I see that coming.
Well, I think it speaks to a deeper change in Edmonton's philosophy. You know, they're a far more defensive team than they were under Woodcroft. You know, since Knobloch took over, they've really kind of clamped it down defensively. You know, you saw some games against Dallas. I think it was game 5. Dallas had 10 shots through 2 periods. Like, who does that? And then in the game that they won to win the whole thing, Edmonton had 10 shots the whole game. There's games in the past where Connor McDavid had 10 shots without breaking a sweat. I think players have changed their roles. I think they've accepted more responsibility, and I think that they've adopted parts of the game that maybe they hadn't in the past for the greater good. The one thing about the penalty kill, I don't know that it's going to be as big in this series because Florida's not a team that lives on the power play, right? They want to play you 5-on-5 because they think they're better 5-on-5. They don't draw a lot of penalties. They didn't draw a lot of penalties against the Rangers. They scored 5 times on the power play, but I don't think that was the difference in the series. The Rangers were, the Panthers were a far better 5-on-5 team than the Rangers were. And I think that's where they're going to want to contest this game as well, this series.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I agree with you. But the PK stat just blows me away. But the thing about it is, and I think you brought it up, 10 shots on goal in Game 6 against Dallas. That's what Edmonton had. They scored on 2 on the power play, right? They had 8 even strength shots. I'll tell you right now, they're not beating the Florida Panthers if they're not in control of the puck at times in this series. It's 10 shots on goal ain't going to cut it. 15 is not going to cut it. 20 is borderline going to cut it, right? They're going to have to do a lot more. And even McDavid after Game 6 was like, this was not one of our better games, but we found a way. Stuart Skinner was really good, and Stuart Skinner's going to have to be great in this series. But it's just the Panthers, the way they attack, the way they're a shot volume team, but I think they're a shot volume team in a far more dangerous way than some other shot volume teams in the league, like Carolina, right? The Panthers are a shot volume team by generating the shots from below the goal line or off the walls in that way, not from always up top. They create and they cycle and they have the puck for long stretches of time. They force you to defend. And that's going to be something that the Edmonton Oilers in this series are going to have to deal with. And it's something, Sean, that they have not had to deal with yet in these playoffs. The Kings, they averaged 29 shots per game against the Oilers. That's what Skinner faced, but they weren't that dangerous. The Canucks barely got shots off. I mean, in the 5 games Skinner played in that series, they averaged 18 shots on goal. And then in the Dallas series, Dallas averaged 25 per game. I mean, Florida could average 35 per game. And you saw how good Igor Shesterkin had to be just to keep the Rangers in the series against the Panthers. It's going to be a whole different beast here for the Edmonton Oilers than they've dealt with. And it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that, especially in games 1 and 2 when the Panthers also control the matchups.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I think more interesting is, the one thing that shocked me about the Dallas-Edmonton series is it was a really high-skilled shinny game.
It was wide open.
They went up and down the ice. There wasn't a lot of malice. There wasn't a lot of argy-bargy. There wasn't a lot of anything.
Argy-bargy?
Yes.
Argy-bargy.
There wasn't a...
Malice got. Argy-bargy?
Argy-bargy.
That one's new.
That's a good soccer term, English soccer, when it gets a little feisty. And there was none of that. There was very little post whistles, scrums. It was as genteel a playoff series as I think you'll see. This will not be that. The Florida Panthers are going to ask questions of the Edmonton Oilers that they haven't had to answer yet. I'm not saying that they can't answer them. I think this Edmonton team is a pretty rugged team when they want to be. You look at some of their guys, Kane, Ekholm, Nurse. When they want to muck it up, they can do it. But this is a 18 skater commitment from the Florida Panthers. And you talk about cycling, and I thought that Ranger-Panthers series was pretty even early on. And then the physical toll just started paying off. Right? And that's what the Panthers want to do. They don't mind. Oh, we lose a game early in the series, that's okay. Did we get our pound of flesh? Is it going to pay off later? And they have players who revel in it. Like that's their game, that's their identity, and that's who they're going to be. And I'm curious to see if Edmonton can handle that because they haven't had it yet.
Well, and Florida couldn't do that in the Stanley Cup final when they were in it last year because they were too banged up. They just couldn't get to that style of game. they had to go through so much to play that style of game in their first 3 rounds. They couldn't. They were just too injured to do it then.
And
Sean. But they're not injured now.
and they played a team that was better at it.
Right.
The Vegas Golden Knights reveled in it as much as Florida did. It was trench warfare, and they were like, yay. Like, this is what I want to do. I don't want to skate. I want to hit you. You want to hit me. Let's see who's standing at the end. And one guy was playing with a broken body, and the other guy wasn't.
Right. And it's not even the hits. It's not even the big hits or, that memorable, blasting a guy into the boards or anything like that. It's just the first 20 minutes of a game, they lean on you, right? The second 20 minutes, they're still leaning on you. By that third period, you don't want them leaning. You just don't want them leaning on you anymore. And what you going to do? What are you going to do in the third period when that happens? Well, this is what the Rangers did. They couldn't handle it. They kind of sat back. They got a little conservative. And the times, if they wanted to try to take a risk, all that leaning, they couldn't do it. And the Panthers were there to pick it right off and go the other way. You do that in game 1. You do it in game 2, game 3. I mean, that pays. You pay a price, right? I mean, if you're the Oilers, like that takes a toll on you. And that's where I think the big advantage is here. There's a number of different places where I think the Panthers have an advantage. But to me, that's the biggest advantage is their ability to play heavy, hard hockey without having and getting better at it through the course of a game and through the course of a series. And they have done that throughout these playoffs. And they were doing that throughout the playoffs last year until they ran into Vegas and they ran into all of their injuries. I don't know that Edmonton, due credit to them for getting where they are right now and how they've played, the way they've defended, the penalty kill, the power play, the change in approach and style. I mean, they belong here, but I just don't know, Sean, if they can handle that. I think it could be a 6 or 7 game series, and I don't know if the Oilers are going to have enough left in the tank by game 6 or 7 to keep going against this Florida team.
Look, the Panthers' best period is their third period. It has been regular season, playoffs. They are supremely conditioned. And again, it's the way that they're built. It's what they're built for. It's how they find meaning, right? And it's not even physical. Like, we talk about the physical. Yeah, it stinks to get hurt, to get hit, right? Nobody wants to go and get the puck behind their net and get smeared along the boards. It's the mental duress of never having the freedom to hold the puck and say, let me look. I got option A or I got option B. Against the Florida Panthers, you say, and somebody smacks you in the chest. There's no option A or option B. And the whole idea of the forecheck is exactly that, to take away your options, to make you nervous. It's like a quarterback, right, who gets hit too many times. He gets happy feet, and he makes throws before he's supposed to make them. That's what happens to players when they go back to get the puck all the time, and they get hit, or there's the possibility of them getting hit and they have to get rid of it so they don't get hit, is they start to speed up their thought process to a degree that they can't handle it. Their mind's going faster than their body can handle, right. And then they make mistakes and Florida pounces on them.
Yeah, that's their game. And they play it better than everybody else right now. That is their game, and that's going to be something that the Oilers are going to have to handle. Again, in a second here, we're going to have Ryan Callahan. We talked to him all about this series as well. But, Sean, we haven't really talked about the top line storyline in this entire series, or the Cup final, the national storyline, the international storyline. It's Connor McDavid finally being in the Stanley Cup final, right? I mean, we say finally. I mean, it's been 9 years. It's not easy to get here, as it's proven that it doesn't just happen for you, but he's accomplished so much. Just the thought of McDavid getting a chance to play for the Stanley Cup, I think that is a big deal. I think we know it's a big deal, but I think it's just a big deal on a national level. I think it's going to drive a lot of viewing, a lot of interest. This guy's must-see TV. And I think it just helps along the way, so, just continue to build the legacy that this guy is building. It's been a lot of individual, and he's been all about the team. And now he may finally have the team that can get the job done. And I'm excited, Sean, to just see Connor McDavid in the Stanley Cup final and have all the attention focused on him for a little bit in the biggest part of the season for the National Hockey League.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's Edmonton too. It's Edmonton being in the spotlight, right? This is one of the crown jewels of the NHL. 2006, I was there, and the travel was almost as bad as it's going to be for this little soiree. Although I do think it's going to be a factor. No one cares, but I think it's going to be a factor on the players as well. It's going to take them out of their routine. Nobody, even the Western teams, don't do this, what we're going to ask these players to do over the next 7 games. So, but it's awesome that they're in the spotlight, and that Connor McDavid and Draisaitl are in the spotlight. Zach Hyman, like, they have some really, really great players. And I think even as good as Edmonton is and as much watch TV as Connor McDavid is, I think a lot of people miss them because they're tough watch. Like, time-wise, for a casual fan, on a Wednesday night, hard to watch the Edmonton Oilers. You got to get up at 6 a.m. If it's not your life like it is for you and I think, I have some casual fans who are like, yeah, I'd love to see more Connor McDavid. It's just tough. And now it's not going to be. It's going to be 6-7 games of 8 o'clock starts against unbelievable competition. And that's even better. Like, now you're going to see him at his absolute best, because he's going to need to be better than Barkov and the other players that we've talked about, whether it's Forsling or Ekblad or Montour. He's going to have to be at the absolute top of his game.
It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Let's go to Ryan Callahan. We've teased it enough. We spoke with the former NHL player, now doing work for ESPN, all about this series, hit on a lot of different topics. Here's our interview with Ryan Callahan. Ryan, thanks so much for jumping on with us. So, big picture, look, what do you think? What do you think of this series we've got ahead of us here? Oilers, Panthers. What's your just, overarching take of what to expect?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great series. I think, first of all, not sure if you looked at these playoffs, you could have picked 2 better teams to face off against each other, from the East and the West. And, I think you look at, the Florida Panthers, and I just love the style of game they play, and in your face. They can do every little bit of everything. They can be physical. They can score. They can defend. Obviously Bobrovsky and Ned is very well too. Been playing very well too. So it just seems like a very complete team to me that I think has learned from last year going to the finals and has taken that experience and brought it to the next level this year, and have got themselves right back to where they wanted to be, and in the Stanley Cup Finals, and a chance to try to, do what they couldn't do last year and win a Stanley Cup. And then, you look at Edmonton, it's a team that, I think has evolved throughout these playoffs. The way they have defended as the playoffs have gone on has really opened up my eyes. It's a team that I'm not sure that I thought, could necessarily play like that, consistently, defending the way they have against the Dallas team that, arguably could be one of the deepest teams that were in these playoffs, that can produce offense. I think, Edmonton has realized that, you can't just, beat teams, 6-5 or, 5-4 or anything like that, that you have to defend to win in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And they've done that. And then, you look at, the way they defend, and then you had two guys like, Draisaitl, McDavid, and what they can bring offensively. They only need a couple opportunities to put the puck in the back of the net, or, a couple open spaces to create a chance. So it's, I think the way they have evolved as a team has been really impressive for me.
Ryan, that's actually what I wanted to ask you about. We've seen teams change from year to year, right? Like you go to the playoffs and you learn something, and then you come back and you're different. And clearly the defensive posture has changed under Knobloch from the time he got hired. But like you, I think it's ramped up in the playoffs. How weird or how unusual is it for a team to be able to change in the playoffs in that manner, do you think?
It's hard. I think it's, you're so used to, and I agree with you. They've defended better under Knobloch, and they've bought into that a bit more under him. But when you get to the playoffs, and the hardest thing is when things start to get tough, right? Either you're down in a series, down in a game, you almost want to revert back to what you know best, and that's to go, right? Is to create opportunities offensively, take those chances, maybe take a chance you shouldn't, and that ends up in the back of your net. That's what you revert to when things aren't going good. And they haven't done that. They've defended really, really well, and they've worried about their own net first. And I go back to actually, I look back to, my experiences, and, in 2015, the Tampa team that I was on that went to the finals, throughout that whole year, we were known for our offense, right? We did take chances. We scored a ton of goals. We had Bishop in net, who was really good, who covered up a lot of our mistakes. And then, I think as that playoff went on, I think we started to realize that we needed to defend better. And, if you look back at that, in that Rangers series in the conference finals, I think is when we really learned it. And we started winning games, 2-1, 2-0 in game 7, I think it was. We started to defend better and just, capitalizing on the opportunities when we created them. And that's kind of what I see out of this Edmonton team is these playoffs have evolved. They've really buckled down defensively, and everybody has bought into it, and it's making a difference, and you can see it on the ice.
Obviously that, part of that is Stuart Skinner as well, right? I mean, he's there. I think he's answered some of his critics. He had the stumble, earlier in the playoffs. He's come back. He's been really strong, but I say that with a but, not because it's Stuart Skinner in net, Ryan, but I say it with a but because the Panthers are just relentless in their attack, and they put a lot of pucks in the net. They're a shot volume team. And you saw what the Rangers had to go through and how Igor Shesterkin had to play just to keep the Rangers in that series. Can the Oilers, defend the Panthers enough to keep the puck away from Stuart Skinner enough to where he's not facing 33, 34, 35 shots a game, 15, 16 high danger chances? Because that's really what, you have to worry about.
Yeah, and I think that's where Florida has the advantage in the series. To be honest with you, is I don't think they can defend them and keep them off, keep that many shots away from them. I don't think they're going to allow 10 shots a game or 12 shots a game, 15, you know what I mean? Where some of those Dallas games, they were able to do that. I don't think you could do that against this Florida team. They come at you with such force, right? Their forecheck is so good. They recover pucks, the way they cycle in the offensive zone, bring their D into in the offensive zone. And you look at the job Shesterkin did, and as you said, it's not a knock on Skinner, but he's not Shesterkin, right? He's been playing well, and he's rebounded from the blip he had, and he's gotten the Oilers to where they are. But as you just out of honesty, he's not Shesterkin, so he's not going to be able to put a Shesterkin type performance together that you saw, New York have to keep them in that series against Florida. So that's my main concern. I think when you look at this series is how do they defend Florida and how do they limit the opportunities and chances against Skinner? Because I tell you what, when they start going and they get their momentum going and they start cycling in that offensive zone, that's a tough team to handle. You almost got the tiger by the tail, and you're trying to hang on. And we saw it against New York, who is a very good team in New York, right? I mean, that's a very good hockey club that knows how to defend, that can, is good defensively. And Florida made them, didn't make them look not like that in the defensive zone.
Ryan, I'm curious, can you think of a player whose developmental arc has changed more than Gustav Forsling? Going from a guy who couldn't find his way on 2-3 teams, being claimed off waivers, and now arguably maybe the best defenseman in this series.
Yeah, I bet you there's some teams kicking themselves right now, looking back and seeing what he's turned into. I can guarantee you that. Yeah, it's been impressive, right? He's definitely established himself as the number one D-man there in Florida. And I covered a lot of their first and second round playoff games, and watching him live, you can really see the impact that he has, his skating abilities. He can defend. It's his plays too that are away from the puck, that he's always in the right position. That's something I always try to watch when I'm, at a game live is, where are guys doing away from the puck and where are they defensively? And seems like he's always in the right spot. And, it's a huge reason, obviously, why Florida is where they are. And I think you're right. I can't think of a player that has evolved from where they were, a couple of years ago to now being one of the most elite defensemen in the NHL.
Yeah, no, he has been. I mean, listen. I mean, what he and Aaron Ekblad have done in these playoffs with Barkov at times too. A lot of times has been remarkable. Shutting down Kucherov, shutting down Pasternak, Zibanejad, Ryder. But now it's going to be their biggest test. I mean, now they've got the potential here of shutting down, a guy like McDavid, and I don't know that you can shut down a guy like McDavid. But I did want to ask you, if you can't shut down McDavid, which listen, he's that good. Do you think that the Panthers will be able to limit him enough, limit his, to just spurts to where they then will be able to control the puck at times when he is on the ice?
Yeah, I mean, I think they can. They're going to try. McDavid is he's a special player. I think he's definitely the best in the world, and a player like that, he's going to get his chances. He'll get his opportunities. The thing is, like, you talk about, Ekblad and Forsling, and you talk about those guys, and it's when McDavid is on the ice, it's all five, right? You got to defend with all five guys. You got to have back pressure. Your gap controls has to be there. You got to take away his time and space when he likes to curl down in the offensive zone. You got to make sure the forwards are on top of him so he can't get that speed. So, I mean, it becomes, with a player like that, it becomes five guys on the ice defending him, making sure where he is at all times. So it's going to be a challenge for Florida, but that's part of it, right? That's kind of why it's so intriguing, this series, is Florida can defend so well and can take over games, but against the best player in the world, let's see how these two match up and see who comes out on top.
In your opinion, how much does coaching matter at this point? And I ask only because I was thinking about what you were saying about McDavid, and I don't know that there's mismatches, right? When they try and play against Florida, I think Paul's comfortable with whoever he puts out there defensively. But this is maybe the most experienced coach in the NHL against the least experienced coach in the NHL.
Yeah, I think it plays into it. And, I think coaches that can adjust on the fly and change things on the fly are the ones that usually do have success, that aren't stubborn in the way that they're playing. If something's not working, you got to be able to switch it up. And I think a veteran coach knows to do that, who's been in those situations before. Whether it's a system or a matchup or whatever it is, a power play situation, that ability, not even an ability, the willingness, right, to get away from maybe something that you guys are used to doing or has gotten you there, to change it up to defend a McDavid or to stop a power play. I think a coach that is willing to adjust in game and within games to games are ones that have success. So I definitely think coaching is still prevalent as you go on throughout these series. I think, there's less little things you're coaching. It's more systems and, how to defend guys or what you want to do in certain situations. Special teams is a huge part of that, as you're seeing different power plays, different penalty kills. How do you adjust to find those holes, or, how do you adjust your penalty kill to shut down a power play? So I think that's part of it. But with saying that, just because Knoblauch's, his first year as coach doesn't mean that he doesn't have the ability to do that. It's just, I think, Paul Maurice has been in these situations before and knows what has worked and what hasn't.
Speaking of Knoblauch, Ryan, often you have a specific role in addition to what you do on the line. Like I think of Matthias Janmark, right? And McLeod and Connor Brown, Fogle. Like these guys are penalty killers. They don't get power play time, but they've been given that role. And I wonder from your perspective, just the value of that. So, if you're a guy who strictly plays 5-on-5, but you're not on any special teams, you could kind of get lost in the game, right? But if on the PK, hey, that's my job. Or we know who their power play is, but if you have that PK role, hey, that's my job. Take ownership of that. Knoblauch's done that with this group. I wonder if you could just speak to the value of that and how that makes a player feel.
Yeah, it does. It makes you feel like you're a part of it, right? That your role matters. It empowers you, I think, as a player. And that's something that you take pride in. I was predominantly I did power play and penalty kill throughout my career, but predominantly, a penalty killer. And, I knew that was one of my main roles as I killed penalties, and you take pride in that, right? You go on the ice and you want to do everything you can to make sure puck doesn't go in the net, because that's your huge responsibility on this team. And I think Knoblauch's done a great job of that. I think you're absolutely correct of identifying the guys that who they are and what they can do well in those roles, and have put them there, and it empowers them. And it shows a guy like, hey, we trust you here. Like, this is your spot. This is where you're going to make a difference for us. This is where you're going to make a difference in this game is in this spot on the penalty kill. Go out there and do your job. And I think that excites a player, and makes them feel like they're a part of it. And also just gives them a responsibility and a sense of pride when you accomplish it, right? I've been on a lot of penalty killing groups, and the best ones I've been on are the ones that kind of have the same group of guys, and that group of guys have, come together and, basically say, like, this is it. Like, we're a special teams team, like, we're not going to let goals against. We're going to, come together, and it's all part of it. So he's done a great job of that. And, I think even more is the guys accepting that role, realizing it, and then exceeding at it.
Related to that, Ryan, I'm curious, why do you think that the penalty kill tends to outperform the power play in the playoffs? Like, you look at some of the teams that were really good power play teams, they weren't very good, especially as the playoffs go deeper, right? The Rangers lived on their power play, and by the end of the playoffs, they couldn't get anything going with it. And it seems to be that way a lot. And I'm curious, as somebody who's done both and knows a little bit about it, if you have a theory as to why the penalty kill at this time of year tends to be more dominant than the power play.
I think there's a lot of things that probably go into it. If you look at the penalty kill, I think there's just a more sense of desperation. Every goal, every game means so much, where in the regular season, if I miss a guy, and it's tough to say, but you miss a guy or you miss a block shot, like, it's not going to be the end of the world. You let a goal in game 52, right? But when you're in the playoffs, you let a goal in game 1 or game 7, doesn't matter. Like, that could be the difference goal of this game. It could be the difference of the whole series, right? So there's just that, I think, in a penalty kill, there's that sense of urgency and sense of pride. Like, I remember I used to get excited about killing penalties in the playoffs, because they meant, like, the fans would cheer, right? You'd get a block, you'd clear the puck. Everybody knew the importance of it, right? And then if you look at the flip side of it, on a power play, there's a lot more pressure on a power play to score. It's, like I said, your regular season, you go 0 for 8, whatever, you know what I mean? You look at video, you'll pick it up. Obviously you're upset about it, but all of a sudden in the playoff series, you go 0 for 8. Now you've lost 2 games in a row, 3 games in a row, and your power play is dry. All of a sudden you're grabbing your stick tighter, you're more tense. The pressure rises. The media is talking about it. This whole whirlwind swirls around you where, the next time you guys get a power play, that's what you're thinking about. All of a sudden you don't get an entry, that frustration builds up. You miss an opportunity, that frustration builds up. And the problem is too, like you see it in New York, their power play dried up, and I think that dribbles over to 5-on-5 with some of the top guys. You look at Zibanejad and Kreider, Panarin, who live on the power play all year, did a great job on the power play, but all of a sudden that's not going good. So that frustration creeps into your 5-on-5. The same thing. Now you're even more pressured to score 5-on-5 because the power play is not creating, enough opportunities, and all of a sudden you're struggling all over the place. So it's a long-winded answer, but I think that's kind of what goes into both power play and penalty kill in the playoffs.
That all makes actually a lot of sense. I appreciate that answer, because it does. It's a well thought out, and it makes a lot of sense. Last one from me. So I can't remember the last time Alexander Barkov went into a series where he wasn't the best center in that series. It's happened, I'm sure, but he's not the best. Arguably, he's not the best center in this series. He may not even be the second best center in this series. Is he close, though? Is he close to being the best center in this series? Do you think he could be the best center in this series?
It depends what you value in a centerman, I guess, right? If its value is pure offense and scoring goals and creating opportunities and, being dynamic in an offensive fashion, no, he's not. He's definitely not the best centerman or second best centerman in the series. But if you look at a centerman that kind of has an all-around game of shutting down other guys' top lines, shutting down other top centermen, can create offensively, still can score, goals, contributes on the power play. You look at it that as your most valuable centerman, then he is the best centerman in the series. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I guess it depends how you look at what you value the most in a centerman. We're saying that obviously McDavid is you take McDavid 10 out of 10 times, but but yeah, I mean, Barkov just brings something different, right? There's a different style of game that he has than, McDavid, and both valuable. But if Barkov can play his game and, like you talked about earlier, find a way to slow McDavid down, not shut him down, but just slow him down, lessen his opportunities, I definitely think that, Florida will win the series.
You just stole my last question, Ryan. We had talked all around it. I was going to ask who you like, so I guess I'll ask how long.
Yeah, I definitely like Florida. I do. I think the experience of it last year. Everybody talks about you got to lose before you can win. I don't know if I totally buy into that, but I do buy into playoff experience. Just from being a part of it before. You can beat as many conference finals as you want, but there's nothing like being in a Stanley Cup Finals, from the emotion and the pressure, the ups and downs. I remember, we lost to Chicago in 15 with Tampa. I mean, every game I felt like the emotions were just so high and so low. And I think that whole group learned from that, right? And going forward, once they got to the finals again, I can guarantee you they went back on that and, staying more even keel and being a part of it before and realizing what it's all about. So I guarantee Florida will draw on that from last year. That's a huge experience for them. So I think that's a big part of this series. And yeah, I definitely think I'm going to pick Florida. We're going to press me end games. I'll go Florida, and I don't want them to win it in Edmonton, so I'll do Florida in 7.
There you go. That's my pick too. I had Florida in 7 as well. Hey, give yourself a chance. Plug yourself. What have you been doing during the Stanley Cup Final for ESPN?
Yeah, back to Scott Van Pelt for me. Post game, game 2 and 3. I'll be on Scott Van Pelt post game, little hits, talk about the game, break it down a little bit with him. A lot of fun because I grew up watching Scott Van Pelt, and I'll be in studio and doing things with him. He's a great guy. It's been fun, but crazy. It's coming to an end. It's been a crazy 2 months, 3 months, whatever it's been. Losing track of time, what day it is, where I'm at. So, as I'm sure you guys know.
We live it all the time. Yeah, it's a little different than being a player, right?
Yeah, just a touch.
Ryan, thanks so much, man.
Absolutely.
Great stuff there from Ryan Callahan. And like you said, you can catch him with Scott Van Pelt. He said, I think, after games 2 and 3 on ESPN, and ESPN's got the whole series. So good insight there from Ryan Callahan, former player. Always good to get that type of insight. And he did touch on it. I asked him about Barkov, and I wanted to just go into Barkov here a little bit because he's 100% right. I mean, he's not the player that McDavid or Draisaitl, well, certainly not McDavid is. Nobody's the player that McDavid is. But I got to tell you, Sean, after watching Barkov for 6 straight games in high-level competition against the Rangers in the conference final, I already knew how good he was. I came away even more impressed. There's nothing that you can do to take the puck off of this guy's stick. There's nothing that you can do to outmuscle him. When he has the puck, it's like he's got a shield around him. I don't even understand it. Like, he's just so powerful and so good, and yet and very skilled. It was one of the more remarkable things. Like, every time he came over the boards for a shift, it seemed to me that he had the puck, and nobody could get it off of him. So we talk all about the Selke Trophy with Barkov, and rightfully so, and how good he is as a defensive forward and an all-around forward and all that. His ability to control the puck is elite level. It's as elite level as McDavid's skating. Like, that's the best thing that he does.
Let me tell you this, and I'm going to catch a lot of heat for this, but I'm used to catching a lot of heat for my opinions on this show.
You're going to tell me that Barkov's a better player than McDavid,
no,
aren't you?
What I am going to tell you is if I owned a team and I didn't care about selling tickets, I'd pick Barkov over McDavid.
Okay, would you pick Barkov over McKinnon?
I would. No, I think I would take McKinnon.
Yeah, I would too. The speed factor, the skating factor there, plus he does all the other things. I'm not going to disagree with you on the Barkov over McDavid because of everything that Ryan Callahan talked about. Connor McDavid is the most talented player in the National Hockey League, and I don't think there's anyone close. His ability is outstanding. One of my favorite things that McDavid does is when he gets the puck and he attacks the middle of the ice. especially on the power play. Nobody does it like that. Nobody comes off the wall and attacks the middle of the ice the way that McDavid does. Obviously, nobody skates and knows all those other things. But if I need to build a playoff team to be a perennial Stanley Cup contender, and I'm looking for a number one center that's going to do everything for me, of the two we're talking about in this series, I'll catch heat for it too, Sean. I'm going to take Barkov as well.
He meshes better. He'll always mesh
with anybody he plays with.
He'll always mesh better. Like, you can build your team not around him, in spite of him. You can go and get 17 other skaters and be like, these are the guys I want on my team, and they're all going to work with Barkov. I don't know that you can do that with McDavid. Once you have McDavid, you have to cater your team to a degree to his skill sets. So for me, and again, it's personal preference, right? If you love to watch guys go up and down the ice and toe drags and go through four defenders and all that stuff, which I do love to watch. Like,
who doesn't love to watch that?
McDavid's your guy, but if you want somebody who's going to impact 200 feet of the ice, I don't think I'm being disrespectful to Connor to say that I think Barkov's that guy.
So I will put this out. I'll throw a caveat in here, what we're talking about here. I reserve the right to change my opinion based on how this series goes. Right? Because this is the highest level we've ever seen McDavid at. We've seen Barkov at this level last year. Now, it was granted around a team that just didn't have the health it needed to compete in the type of series that they were in. But if Connor McDavid goes out and does the Connor McDavid things that we know he can do, in addition to playing the strong 200-foot game, the power type of game that I think he can play, we'll see, right? And he's better at this, and he's better in this series than Barkov, then I'm going to change my opinion. Right? That's why we have this series. We can talk all about this, and we look at it, and that's why we put out these opinions before the series starts. We put out the opinions like Panthers in 7. That's my pick. That was Ryan Callahan's pick. We'll get your pick in a minute. And then we let the series play out, right? If we all knew what was going to happen, there'd be no reason to let the series play out. But so I'm reserving my right to change my opinion here if I can see McDavid do these things. And he's going to be doing them against the player that we're judging him right up against and saying, I would take that guy over him, because we're going to see a lot of McDavid and Barkov on the ice together in this series.
I'm always shocked when people take such joy when you're wrong. Not you. When somebody's wrong.
Oh,
when somebody...
You take joy when I'm
somebody,
wrong. You did it earlier in the episode.
Well, that's different. That's personal. What
was that? That wasn't so shocking.
When you're wrong, somebody else has proven you wrong, right? If I say Barkov's the best player and McDavid proves me wrong, like, you should be happy. You shouldn't want to take a pound of flesh out of me. You should be like, see, my guy, he's the guy. Like, it's the same thing with Ranger fans all year, right? With, how could you put him so low in this final, in the Super 16? They were right where they were supposed to be. If you had proved me wrong, you could have then been happy instead of saying, you're a moron. Look. What? In the end, my opinion's my opinion.
You're right. Your opinion is your opinion.
It's ill-informed at times.
As ill-informed, as moronic as it might be at times.
It's ill-informed. It's passionate. It's biased at times. But it's mine. And everybody else has theirs.
It is.
And when yours wins, you should celebrate. You shouldn't denigrate the other person. You should say, hey, I was right. It's way better to be right than to tell somebody else they're wrong.
Very good advice right there. By the way, we haven't gotten your pick. So before we move off of the Cup final, talk about some of the other news going on around the league in the last, 7 or 8 minutes we're going to do this. What is your pick for the Stanley Cup final?
Pain. No, that's not my prediction.
All right, Clubber.
I do that every time, and my wife is like, what are you talking about?
What's your prediction?
What's your prediction? Pain. Panthers in 6.
Panthers in 6. So you think they win in Edmonton in 6? All right.
And it amazes me because home ice doesn't matter anymore. Like, I grew up with home ice being such a big deal. You would never pick a team to win on the other team's ice. And you know, if you had home ice in a game 7, it was huge. Home ice doesn't matter anymore. I think in these playoffs, the visiting team has a winning record.
I'm going to agree with you that home ice doesn't matter. I think it does. But the reason I'm going Panthers in 7 is I think that the Oilers are going to, be pretty good at the start of this series, and eventually the Panthers are just going to lean on them. I can see this series being 2-2 with Edmonton going into Florida winning game 5, 3-2, and then Florida coming back into Edmonton winning game 6 and then going home and taking all of the pound of flesh that they've, taken in this series and utilizing it in that game 7 to win it. That's why I'm going Panthers in 7. So you say Panthers in 6. I got Panthers in 7. Ryan Callahan also said Panthers in 7. So I think we're on board with the Florida Panthers being Stanley Cup champions for the first time in their history. We'll see if we're right. A couple other things that have gone on. Joe Pavelski. He's not playing next year. This is pretty much announcing his retirement, I would think, right? If Joe Pavelski is done for good, and I think he's going to. I don't think he's going to play in the National Hockey League again. I don't see how a guy at his age can take a year off and then come back and continue to play, although he is in terrific shape. 476 goals, 592 assists. He's played in over 1,300 games. This guy was the number 205 pick in the 2003 draft, that vaunted 03 draft, and he was the 205th pick in it. Sean, is Joe Pavelski a Hall of Famer?
Yes. He's a Hall of Famer.
Wow.
Well, for a number of reasons. What he's done in his career, the odds that he overcame, the player that he is, the stuff he's done internationally, all of those things, but also because the bar is so much lower.
Yes. I think, and this is with all due respect to Joe Pavelski, an amazing, astonishing, surprising at times career. The bar is too low to make the Hall of Fame. It's just too low. And he's not a 500 goal scorer. He's not a point per game player. He's not a Stanley Cup champion. He's not a major award winner. But the bar is low enough to where that player can get into the Hall of Fame. A really good career can get you in the Hall of Fame right now. I agree with you.
And he's one of the best American players ever.
He is. He's not the best
American
say that.
Player
ever. Yeah, right. What about Blake Wheeler, who also said at breakup day for the Rangers on Tuesday that he's not sure if he wants to play again next year. That, he's got to talk it over. He's got 3 kids. He's just not 100% sure that he wants to play next year. What about Blake Wheeler, Sean? Is Blake Wheeler in that same boat with Joe Pavelski? And we're talking Wheeler, who hasn't played as many games as Pavelski, 1172 to Pavelski's 1332. He hasn't scored as many goals, right? I mean, I think Wheeler is at 321 in his career. He's got 943 points. Pavelski's got 1,068. So he's played in 150 or so more games, and he's scored a little over 100, about 125 more points. Do you put Blake Wheeler in the conversation?
Not for me. And it's
I agree.
just like, he's never been the guy. Right? Joe's been the guy. And he's had to share it with Joe Thornton.
He shared being the guy.
But has Blake even shared being the guy on a really good team?
Yeah, I think on those Winnipeg teams, he shared it with a couple of. He shared it with Scheifele. He was there for a couple of years there in Winnipeg as the guy or one of the 2 or 3 guys there. No question about it.
I don't know. It doesn't have.
I don't think his numbers.
No, and it just doesn't have the same pop. He was more complimentary to me. And again, no dig on Blake. I don't think everybody is a Hall of Famer. I think you can be a really good player and not be a Hall of Famer. I hope he reconsiders. I would hate for the last memory of Blake Wheeler being him hauling down a Florida Panther on a breakaway. On a play that wasn't his fault.
hauling down Barkov,
Yeah,
by the way.
but on a play that wasn't his fault, and that be the memory that everyone has of him, that and the injury. I mean, for him to come back from that injury was so awe-inspiring, and so much dedication. He could have just said, you know what, the season's over. I'm not going to work at it to come back. He came back faster than everybody thought, and I think that's a huge part of who Blake Wheeler is. And selfishly, I would like to see another year to see what he could do in maybe the right position. He should, find something that appeals to him. But it's a limited thing, right? I don't think he's at his peak anymore.
I don't think he can skate well enough to play in this league right now. I think that was pretty evident this season, to be honest with you. And all right, well, two of the top American-born players could be calling it a career, and terrific careers for both of them. Last thing, Sean, the Combine is going on. We got Mike Morial, Adam Kimmelman covering the Combine for us, the draft Combine in Buffalo. Little bit of news. The New Jersey Devils, Tom Fitzgerald, their GM, spoke to Mike and touched on their pick in the upcoming draft, the number 10 pick, said it's in play. Not surprised by that at all. I mean, Tom Fitzgerald is going to do everything possible to turn the New Jersey Devils back into a Stanley Cup contender this season, at least a Stanley Cup playoff contender for next season. And if he can trade the number 10 pick and make them a better team right away, that's what he's going to do. You got to do it.
Yeah, the most amazing thing is this isn't Lou Lamoriello's Devils anymore. Like, he just comes right out and says what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the way to work, right? Because you go to one team and you're like, hey, I'm thinking about making this trade. Here's the 10 pick. What are you going to give me? And then you don't get to kind of feel the whole market out. You're like, oh, that's a pretty good deal you're offering me. But now, if there's another team that's interested, they know, and they're going to reach out and be like, oh, really? You're thinking about the 10? How about I give you this? So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, they're in the market for a goalie, but the stuff that Mike and Adam are doing in Buffalo at the Combine is unbelievable. They get spectacular access. They know all the players there. They're doing, features, notebooks, news like with Tommy Fitzgerald, and Draft Class podcast, they're doing this week. They're going to have all the top picks, Celebrini and all of those guys are going to be on the podcast this week. So I hope everybody jumps in and listens because it's fantastic. And those guys, there is nobody in North America that knows more about the draft than those two men. Let me just put it that way. And that's not being biased. That's just investment.
Yeah, totally invested. They got so much coverage coming out of there, talking to so many of these prospects, plus GMs and everything like that goes with it. Great access. Definitely check out their coverage on NHL.com. Check out their podcast, NHL Draft Class. Another thing you want to check out, NHL Backstory. This is really interesting. Now, Ranger fans may not want to, handle it right now as they're still, feeling the effects of losing, and the Cup drought's going to go to 31 years. But NHL Backstory Garden Party, it celebrates the 30th anniversary of the 94 Rangers Stanley Cup win, which you, Sean, covered. You were there. You were part of it. NHL Studios release. It's an audio series backstory. So definitely check that out, as well as the Draft Class podcast.
They did not ask me to be involved in the garden party.
Well, that's just insulting.
It is insulting. But it's going to be awesome. It's an awesome story. And yesterday there was no hockey on. Very sad day. Well, there was. I watched some of the AHL game because that's how big a nerd I am. Oh, there's a day off from hockey? Oh, look, the AHL Conference Championships are on. Let me settle down and watch that for a while. But I also watched the ESPN No Easy Victories, which is their 94 retrospective, and it's told through the lens of Stephen McDonald, who was like a super fan, New York City police officer who had been shot and was in a wheelchair, and they named their 7th player award after him, and it's a huge honor.
Yeah, the extra effort
award.
It's
a huge honor for the players who win it, and it was really well told. The whole story of 94, things that I didn't even know covering it, were amazing. Whether you like the Rangers or not, 94 is an incredible story when you think about the history and you think about what was stacked against them, and just there's a momentum to failure. I'm a Red Sox fan. I know all about the momentum to failure, and then it breaks, and it starts anew, and you get to choose what your history is after that. But to break that momentum of failure is so hard, and I think both of these vehicles illustrate how hard it was and the special people it took to make it happen. People like Adam Graves and Mark Messier and Brian Leach and Mike Richter. It's one of the biggest reasons why they're special and why they're Hall of Famers, because they ended something that 54 years of players could not end.
And it's one of the greatest sports stories in New York, too. And also, by the way, they're on 31 years now. So they're still 23 away from that. But they're in a momentum of failure to get it done, even though they're close right now. So that's NHL Backstory Garden Party. It celebrates the 30th anniversary of the 94 Rangers Stanley Cup win and NHL Studios release. Sean, this was fun. You're on your way to Florida. I'm not going to games 1 and 2. I'm picking up the series in game 3. This should be a lot of fun, man.
It's going to be awesome. It'll be great to be in Florida again, see some good friends, enjoy the beach a little bit, although the weather's nice here in Jersey now, finally. And it's going to be a great series. It's going to be fantastic. That's all I can say about it. I'm so excited. And like I said, even the daunting travel can't dampen my excitement over this. That's how good this series is going to be.
I think so, too. And everybody out there, enjoy it.